Hi, Mel.
Hey, Jackie.
So, I have another movie that I feel like I have to tell people about that I haven't seen, and I chose you to share this journey with. Can I tell you the
Okay,
movie that I've never seen?
please do.
Okay. The movie is Pulp Fiction.
Pulp Fiction,
Pulp Fiction.
like made in the 90s, Pulp Fiction.
That one. Yep. And literally all I know is Uma Thurman, John Travolta looking greasy with a ponytail and cigarettes and Quentin Tarantino. So I feel like I should have started probably with Quentin Tarantino knowing full well that that means I'm never going to be able to guess what this movie's about. But I mean, I see a lot of like smoking, and the cover of the like DVD jacket has like real sexy dark looking Uma Thurman. So I'm guessing there's some like maybe a murder, or maybe like she's just being her typical self, being like kind of slinky. I don't know. Lots of secrets, maybe. I really have no idea.
You got it. That's the whole movie.
What? How
Yeah.
does that? I mean, it is a Quentin Tarantino movie, so.
Well, you're you're in for a ride. I'm so excited for you, honestly.
Oh my gosh. Well, now I mean, if I already kind of guessed it and all my guesses were like all over the place, I'm a little nervous, but I'm excited, I guess.
I mean, you don't even have to watch it now, to be honest, because you know everything there is to know.
Oh man.
Smoking, greasy, John Travolta, Uma Thurman looking sexy. Yeah, you're good.
Okay, well then I guess thanks for coming. I'll talk to you later, I guess. Thanks for coming on
Okay,
the show.
super fun. Thank you.
Well, I'm gonna go jump into this crazy ride with John Travolta and Uma Thurman, and I'll let you know how it goes.
Okay, good luck.
Welcome to Jackie Watches Stuff. This is a podcast chronicling my cinematic quest to finally watch the movies I probably should have already seen, and I'm bringing my friends along with me. Hey, so before I tell Mel what I thought about Pulp Fiction, I just wanted to let you know that I'm going to be hosting my first ever Movie of the Month live stream. It's on August 26th. Now, normally this is something that only supporters on Patreon can get access to, but I wanted to share the first one with all of you. So on Wednesday, August 26th at 8 p.m. Eastern, me and Sean, my producer, will be talking about one of my favorite movies, Mean Girls. You guys will be able to listen to our discussion about the movie live, and you can ask us questions as we're talking. We're going to have a ton more information in the show notes, and you can head over to patreon.com/JackieWatchesStuff to tune in. So hope to see you on the 26th, and wear pink. On Wednesdays, we wear pink. So, Mel, I think it goes without saying we have an explicit tag on this podcast, but I think we definitely need it for Pulp Fiction. That was a lot. That was a lot.
Oh, are you talking about the cursing?
Yes, just a
The
little.
very occasional sparse cursing that happened in the
Yeah,
movie? Yeah.
it's only a couple times, a little bit.
Yeah.
I think everybody probably Googles this, but I did Google the number of times they use the F word. Do you know
Oh,
how many times they use the F word? They use the F word 265 times in this film.
really? I feel like that's low.
It does feel low, but there's some other colorful language that we choose.
There's there's some really colorful language. It's true.
Yes. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. I'm also really nervous because I always am required to recap these movies in 30 seconds. And this is real difficult, but I'm going to try my best. Will you time me
Yes, I will.
and still
Tell me when
support
you're
me,
ready.
even if I fumble through this?
I'm so ready. Go for it.
Okay. Count me in.
You got this. Ready? 3, 2, 1, go.
Okay, so there's like 3-ish things happening at the same time, and they're all out of chronological order, and it's super confusing because it's Quentin Tarantino, but there's a ton of drugs, and this dude, Marcellus, is like super rich and powerful and makes this boxer guy throw a fight so that he can win a bunch of money, but then he also tells this guy, Vince, to take his wife out on a date, and Vince kind of almost kills her after they win a dance contest, whatever, it's fine. And then Vince's partner, Jules, he says he's not going to kill anybody anymore, and then there's a robbery in a diner, but they save the day.
Wow. 28 seconds.
I don't even know if I missed any plot points, but like I probably did
This
because
Does it matter? Let's
It
talk.
doesn't. It doesn't. Oh my gosh. Yeah, this was an adventure that we went on.
So, Jackie, how did you like the movie?
How did I like the movie? Well, it was an adventure. I definitely spent the first like half of it not sure what was going on. I also couldn't quite tell what the point was, especially as we got towards the end of the movie. So that's my answer.
Gotcha. What the point was. That's a really good point. So I am a writer and I enjoy storytelling. And the question I asked myself was, who is the protagonist of this story? And
Ooh.
I don't have the answer to that question still. I have not a clue. It might be Quentin Tarantino himself.
Ooh, that's interesting. I was gonna say Vince, maybe,
Mhm, mhm.
but then I would say that I mean, he takes over a good like, he's kind of involved. I mean, I guess they're all involved in all aspects of the story, except maybe, the robbers, Honey Bunny and the other dude whose name I can't remember. But I would also maybe say Butch because he goes through a bit of a moment
Mhm.
throughout this movie. But yeah, it was a little complicated, so I'm kind of excited to jump into it, especially because it was such a big deal. So I know that this whole podcast is about me not seeing the movies I should have seen, but this thing has won several awards. It was considered a touchstone film and selected for preservation in the National Film Registry from the
Was it?
Library of Congress. Yeah.
Get
Like
out.
this is considered culturally, historically, and or aesthetically significant. So, I mean, I don't know which one it technically qualifies under. I don't know if I would say aesthetics, but
You know what? I get that. I get it. So can I share the first time I saw it, but I won't make this whole podcast about me?
this podcast is so much about you as it is about this movie. So go ahead.
All right, so this movie came out in 1994, and I was 16 years old, and I had pretty much never seen a cooler movie in my life, and I think that's what every 16-year-old was thinking at the time. Like, this was the epitome of just coolness, at least for like the suburban Seattle white girl that I was, who was a little bit grungy and like into grunge at the time. And there
Ooh.
was something about Quentin Tarantino and the like violence in his movie where you're like, oh my God, look at all this violence. It's so pointless and cool. I don't know. There was just, I don't, I look back at 16-year-old me and I think, wow, kid, you really grew up. I'm proud of you.
Yeah. I mean, knowing you as a human now and hearing what I'm hearing from you about how this movie impacted your life, I would say you did okay. You did okay because you didn't end up ODing on somebody's floor with
Hmm.
a syringe in your chest. So,
I'm pretty sure this movie gave me a pretty strong phobia of actually doing any cocaine or heroin, like at all, because I didn't want that. I was like, oh, I really don't want a syringe in my chest. So I'm going to stay away from the hard drugs.
wow, maybe that was Quentin Tarantino's MO the whole time. Like,
Maybe
don't do drugs, kids.
don't do
Look what can
drugs.
happen. Wow.
Dare to stay away from the drugs. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's exactly what his point was, and not that he was like on the drugs at the same time.
Absolutely not. Well, let's get into this crazy plot. For those of you who have not seen this movie, or if you couldn't tell when I was talking so fast about it, this movie is 1 to 3 stories smushed together and then jumbled up into different pieces of the timeline. So you're not really watching it in the correct chronological order. Solid example is it opens in a diner with a robbery about to start and then it ends with that same robbery and you see what happens. So I don't know. It's a lot to go through. So Mel, thank you for coming with me on this crazy
I'm
ride.
holding your hand right now, and we're just walking through this really scary place together.
It's real scary. It's
But it's
very
also a
scary.
little funny because I'm like, we're just surrounded on both sides by Quentin Tarantino and his bullshit.
That's a great way to describe it. So let's walk over to the apartment building that's kind of one of the first scenes that we see after the robbery
Okay.
begins in the diner. It's Samuel L. Jackson. It's John Travolta. John Travolta's got some hair going on. He
Oh,
has an
man.
earring.
Ooh, the
He's
hair.
whew, I don't know what is happening there. And then also I wrote weird accent question mark because I'm not quite sure what he was quite going for with this like kind of character choice. I'm not sure if we had like a thick like New York or New Jersey accent. I don't know if we were like trying to be quote ghetto, which I'm putting big quotes around, but it was weird. It
Maybe
was real weird.
because he had just spent 3 years in Amsterdam.
Yes, did you hear that he was in Amsterdam?
Oh,
That
did I
comes
hear
up.
it? Oh,
Did you know he
I
went to
didn't know.
Amsterdam?
Gosh, I
He
only
went to
heard it
Amsterdam.
once, maybe
Oh
twice.
my goodness. Ugh, goodness. Okay, we get it. Cool, you went to Amsterdam that
Did you
one
know
time.
that I ate at a McDonald's in Amsterdam? I did.
I did. I did. And I know that this whole what do they call a Big Mac in France line is fairly popular. I had never heard it like ever. So, um the thing that really confused me but then makes sense is they're talking about whether or not a foot massage has any sexual implication.
Oh, uh-huh.
And I've never heard the word foot massage used so many times in dialogue in a row.
Right, right. I mean, I think sometimes they call it a fucking foot massage, but yeah.
Like, who? Because then we learn later that this whole thing maybe was a lie. We're not really sure because according to the person who quote received this foot massage, aka Marcellus's wife, nothing happened. So we're really not sure.
Yeah, it's a little unclear, but you know what is clear is the subtle homophobia they slipped in there about giving guys foot massages.
Yes, that was
Mhm.
very clear. And I think a common theme outside of swearing in this movie is like, ooh, this doesn't feel great anymore as a movie. In 1994, we could get away with saying some of these things, but now in 2020, we learn that those things aren't cool to say. And that's something I've been realizing through this podcast is that many movies made in the late 80s and early 90s had a very different view on the world than we do now. So there's a lot of not great stuff in there.
So, I think I watched it about 6 or 7 times between 94 and, like, 98 because it was the cool movie that you watched with your friends, and then I went away to college, and when you were in college in the mid to late 90s, every person you knew had a Pulp Fiction poster. It was not it was not optional, you had to get one, you were given one at the registrar's office, and you had to put it in your dorm somewhere or in your apartment. It was required. Now that I think back, it's like there was a really low standard for problematicness in the 90s.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we're seeing that like very clear through this movie and through all of the dialogue and just the choices that were made. Explicitly and implicitly, I would say, throughout the entire movie, which is just
Yeah.
sad.
So what happens, yeah, let's go back to the apartment scene because
Oh my
I'm
gosh,
still holding
yes.
your hand.
We're in the apartment. We are with who we learn. I think we learn at this point, maybe not. John Travolta plays Vince, and Samuel L. Jackson plays Jules. They basically show up. Jules terrorizes these three young kids that are just kind of chilling in their apartment. He eats their cheeseburger, and then he takes a suitcase and shoots the kid while quoting the Bible, which I did learn is not completely accurate in typical Tarantino way. He's like, I like this Bible quote, but I don't love it for what I need it to do, so I'm just going to tweak it, which
Mm.
I didn't know you could edit the Bible for your own personal use, but that's, I think, a different podcast.
You didn't know? I mean, didn't you get the email from King James?
Oh, no, I did not. I absolutely did not. So that's quite the opener. We see basically a robbery in action. We get some typical late 90s or mid to late 90s credit roll. And then we see Samuel L. Jackson shoot a kid in the face. So here we are. After that scene, we have to now watch Vincent like go take Marcellus's wife out on a date, but not before he goes to buy heroin from this his buddy, I guess.
Eric Stoltz,
It's
yeah.
very weird. I did read that Quentin Tarantino was like tossing up the idea of playing either this role or playing the role that he took, Jimmy. And he decided he wanted to play Jimmy only because he wanted to be behind the camera for the overdose scene, which is selfish, interesting, aware. I'm not quite sure. I'm really not sure.
That's fascinating. I'm trying to picture him as switching places with Eric Stoltz, and I'm just not feeling it. I
No,
don't
I
know.
don't think he could have played like chill, just kind of floating, kind of dude. I think he needed to be the uptight friend that got stuck with a dead guy in his garage. It
Although,
just fits.
I see that either case, like, he would have been wearing basically, like, a robe and some pajamas-ish.
Yep. Yep.
So,
And that's again a good choice.
he's got a thing, he's got his theme,
Mhm.
like, he knows his comfort zone, and, the movie was really his fantasy about, like, what would be the most awesomest cool things that guys could do, and, he just inserted himself into that fantasy where he felt comfortable, and I wish I could respect that. I'll just say that I do. So he buys, like, world-class heroin from Eric Stoltz and,
Yes,
like,
because I learned that Coke is dead. And I'm like, "Oh,
goes to
yes, of course. I know all these things."
as a 16-year-old, I felt, like I could say that with confidence now and just sound really cool. Like, "Oh,
Yeah.
Coke is dead."
Yes, Coke is dead, obviously. So here, take this amazing heroin that I have. So he buys this heroin and he says that he can't stick around to kind of hang around and get high with them, but he's like, "Oh, I got to go to this thing. Can I just use your bathroom real quick?" And just shoots up in the bathroom. And
Right.
we have to watch this needle. And I didn't watch it, I will admit. So I guess I haven't watched this movie in full because I did not watch this scene. It was very gross. But,
It wasn't the best. It was a
oh,
really, really extreme close-up on the needle, and then, like, a little bit of blood goes in it, and then, like, the
ugh.
shooting up part. I know, it's disgusting.
We should
Uh,
have like disclaimered this. So sorry, listeners, if you're nauseous and get nauseous like me. Ugh, gross.
I'll
It
put
was
in a
very gross.
I'll put in a trigger warning right now. Trigger warning,
Trigger warning.
audience.
There's blood and needles in this movie, but they yes, a content warning.
And then he gets high as fuck and drives? Like
Yes,
like,
which
do a lot of people drive on heroin? I don't know. See, here's because I stayed away from the hard drugs after watching this movie, I don't know if people drive while they're on heroin.
I don't know if this was just a metaphor for his like how he feels or like anything like that. And then we need to transition over into the next scene, which is him showing up at Mia's house. Or is it that he truly drove, which wouldn't surprise me either. This, if I were to summarize Quentin Tarantino, I would show somebody this scene of like John Travolta pretending to have just like shot up heroin in a friend's bathroom driving a car with like the wind blowing through his greasy, gross, long ponytail hair.
Yeah. So he was kind of, like, slurring his words and looking really sleepy when he shows up to that super creepy '50s diner, which
Yes.
I don't know why I didn't realize it was so creepy before, but I was super creeped out by it. What did you think?
Yeah, he was definitely not all there. I mean, even when he shows up at Mia's, he was kind of not with it. And I
Oh,
mean,
right, 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 right.
she then had the creepy like I'm watching you on the camera thing, which that didn't really go anywhere. I thought maybe that would evolve into something, but it didn't. And so he shows up at the house, and I was so happy because I finally got to watch the original scene of the John Travolta looking around trying to find something meme. And I'm very excited.
You did, congratulations.
Yay!
Yay,
And I
Jackie.
will say I was very excited because I was watching this with my boyfriend and I'm like, "Oh, the meme! Oh my gosh, the meme!" And he said, "What are you talking about?" So I got to educate him on this incredible GIF meme thing.
Oh, what a
So
moment. I'm so proud of you.
it's so good. It's so good. And I love that something that is that iconic on the internet stems from a movie that came out in the early 90s. It's just like that shows, I guess, that this really is a timeless and historic piece of cinema.
Timeless. It's like Shakespeare.
Absolutely. I would put it on the same level. Tarantino and Shakespeare, two greats.
I mean, what's the difference?
Absolutely. But then they do go to that really, really cool diner thing that I would dine at all the time. Apparently, this cost $150,000 to build this set.
Whoa,
Uh,
really?
Yeah, it was the most expensive thing that they had to build or buy for this entire movie. Their whole budget was $8.5 million. And so to spend like $150,000 on this set that truly wasn't, when you think about the entirety of the movie, wasn't really that big of a deal. I know that we have this iconic dancing scene and, we have some plot movement in this diner, but did we really need to get all these cars and lookalikes and all of these background actors and all these kind of things? Did we really have to have a dance contest? I don't know. But
Oh,
yeah,
you're right.
$150,000.
Oh, that's bananas. I did not know. I actually thought maybe it was a real restaurant because you know how restaurants kinda, like, come and go,
Yeah.
and, but you're right, and I learned afterwards or sort of realized that, like, Buddy Holly was Steve Buscemi.
Yes, I
What?
did not know that until I was doing my research, and I felt really embarrassed for myself. And I was like, "Wow, that's amazing. I love that."
I didn't even notice. Also, did you notice how the milkshake was $5 and that seemed really expensive?
Yes, and I was like, "Why are we freaking out?" I wasn't quite sure where we were going with this whole thing. I
I
wasn't sure.
remember thinking that that did seem expensive. Like, I didn't question it. I was like, "Oh, yeah, $5 milkshake, that's super expensive," when I was 16 or whatever, and,
No.
but now it's, I mean, I would expect to pay $10 for a really good milkshake, especially in LA.
Yeah, well, and she got, like, the
More.
bonus cup. That's a
Right.
big deal. They
Right? They
give you
gave
the
her
extra.
that was so nice of them.
Tune in to our new podcast all about milkshakes with Jackie and Mel because I have
Fictional
feelings of
restaurants
milkshakes.
with Jackie and
So
Mel.
good. I love it. I will say, and I am silly because I read it, but I forgot to note it down. But I do remember in my research that, however, Buddy Holly, Steve Buscemi, asks her how she wants the milkshake, what he says is basically saying, "Do you want it white or black, aka vanilla or chocolate?" So
Right.
just another feels bad kind of moment.
Right, just
Just
a little
if we're
moment.
clocking those,
Mhm.
if we're clocking those. So he mentions again that he was in Amsterdam because he tells literally everybody. And she talks about this movie that she was in, or a pilot, Fox Force 5, which is apparently also mentioned in Kill Bill. And it's essentially the description of the first one, which is like very odd to me. I mean, not odd, but interesting.
A little continuity. Okay.
Yeah, we're
I
just
can
drawing
respect it.
lines.
Sure.
But he loves to do that. He loves to have characters move through movies and maybe evolve and then show up later as the same person but years later or stuff like that. So it doesn't really surprise me.
I wonder if, I didn't see a lot of Quentin Tarantino movies after this one, I will admit, partially because I was in college and I just didn't go to the movies a lot for some reason. I just didn't. And, then I just didn't see Quentin Tarantino movies after that for whatever reason. Like, my taste really changed, and I changed as a person. So I didn't see his movies, especially the one that was like, oh my gosh, Inglorious Bastards, right?
Yes.
I'm just curious though, was there some continuity with the military and Butch's family or
Oh,
anything? I'd
that's
be curious.
interesting. I saw Inglorious Bastards so long ago that I would not be able to tell you factually, but that is something interesting to look into. I wonder if his family, with the whole watch thing, that was weird, uh, if he is part of that or if he's just an actor or something in the background. Interesting. Interesting. Quentin Tarantino, call us. Let us know if
Are
we're right.
there more watches up people's asses in your
Yeah.
movie?
How many watches are hidden in Inglorious Bastards? That's the question.
We will never know. Literally, there could be like dozens.
We have no idea.
Yeah.
So at the diner, they enter the twist contest. It's a very interesting dance moment, and they get home, and we see them with the trophy. So they won, yay! But apparently, when Butch is going back to get his watch at the apartment, so we're fast forwarding all the way towards the end of this movie, there is a radio alert that is going on as he walks in his apartment to get the watch that talks about this trophy being stolen. So again, we're just weaving
Wait.
all the threads.
Okay, I must have missed that entirely. The trophy was stolen from the
So
contest.
This actually came from my research. I will not say that I caught this myself. So the implication is that when we see it for the first time, this trophy, when Vince and Mia get home, we say, oh, they won. That's adorable. But we hear this radio bulletin apparently later that says that the trophy was stolen from the diner, probably implying that they didn't win. They just stole it and got out of there, which wouldn't
Oh,
surprise me.
okay, I gotcha. I'm
Hmm.
right there with you now.
So, just a fun little Quentin Tarantino fact. So,
I really felt like that they had earned it. We didn't see
yes,
any other dancers because
I know.
as far as we know, they were the best dancers, so why wouldn't they
Right.
have earned a trophy? Like, what?
And maybe every other couple just said, "Whoa, I can't beat the energy that these two are putting down
I'm really
on the floor."
surprised that I didn't see better dancing from John Travolta, I will be honest with you.
Yeah, I was just uncomfortable the whole time, and I really was trying to find, like, behind the scenes about this particular moment because it was a little bit of, "Hey, John, you were Grease Lightning for a hot minute. Aren't you good at this? Like, don't you have hips?" But apparently
And wasn't he in,
not.
like, Saturday Night Fever or something?
Yes, he's in a lot of movies that
Right.
require him to be good at dancing,
He's
but,
basically Patrick Swayze, but I don't
like,
know, not as
with
cool.
eh, I mean, yeah, I guess.
I s
Less
Another
less,
conversation.
like, inherently sexy.
Okay,
Patrick Swayze is just always sexy, can't turn it off. John Travolta can control it.
I gotcha.
So, who knows? Maybe he was told to knock it down. Like, "Hey, too sexy. Bring it down."
You're not Patrick Swayze, John.
Yeah, hey, listen. Know yourself. Know your strengths. But this is right before one of the crazy scenes of Mia overdosing. So they're back at the house and she finds his heroin, but she thinks it's Coke and decides to snort it and almost dies. So they rush to Lance's house and John Travolta pulls out a cell phone from 1994. And it was like a very beautiful throwback for me in the year 2020.
Do you remember how Eric Souls was freaking out? He's like, "Are you calling me on a cellular
Yeah.
phone?"
He was freaking out.
He
He
was.
couldn't handle it. It also never, ever, ever goes to voicemail, which I think is very funny because it just keeps ringing forever. So we drag Mia's cold, I was about to say cold dead body, but nope, she's not dead yet. Cold body across the lawn. And then they just are, the whole thing is panic. And I learned that this scene that I also barely watched through my squinty eyes because it involved a needle. Disclaimer, there is a needle involved in this next scene, listeners. Uh, this scene where Vince has to stab the adrenaline shot in her heart, which still doesn't track. I am not a medical professional, but that didn't feel like it was the right move to me generally. But I don't know.
I don't. I really should have researched this because I'm really curious.
Yeah, that was one Google search that I didn't want to do, like, was how do I stab someone in the heart?
I feel like I know enough from watching Grey's Anatomy slash when I was in school that the heart really is on the left side of your rib cage a bit, but
Yes.
um,
Yes.
yeah, I don't know. But in this rare moment, I'm going to trust that Quentin Tarantino did his research. Yeah,
I would guess so. I mean, we have Lance even saying, "Oh, you have to break the rib cage here, and you have to pull and do this, and all these things." I learned that the way they shot this was actually well, not in reverse, but they shot the scene with Vince pulling the needle out of her because it was already in there. And then when they went to go fix it in post, they just played it backwards to make it look like he was stabbing her.
get
I guess
out.
because they were like, oh, maybe we shouldn't try to trust John Travolta to stab Uma Thurman in the chest effectively. Maybe.
I'm thinking that it's. I think that all the characters are pretty much lucky that they're alive in this movie.
Absolutely.
Anybody who is alive at any point is probably pretty lucky to be alive because they didn't get shot, they didn't
Hmm.
OD, they didn't crash or whatever. So, I mean, a little bit of a fakey, not quite medically accurate injection. Okay. All right. That's
Yeah,
fine.
like we'll let it go.
Yeah.
Just when he said you have to stab her in the heart, I said, "I'm sorry, what? What? We have to do what in this movie? I'm sorry, what?" But I was kind of surprised that there wasn't just like a prop syringe or something to that effect, but instead they just said, "Okay, we'll stick this in her and just pull it out and play it backwards, which is fairly smart. I'm not a movie producer, but it's a good option, I would say. Probably one of the safer ones. So it's pretty obvious that this probably was not accurate. I can't imagine that the answer to, oh my gosh, this person is almost dead on my floor, is just stab them in the heart. And I also can't imagine that you would have to just stab them anywhere in the heart, because the heart is a complicated organ, and there's no way this is the way that you solve the problem.
I can't imagine either. I was really, really worried about the needle being sanitized because I've watched a lot of Grey's Anatomy and I know hearts can get infected. And I was like, what if bacteria gets in that heart? Wouldn't that be bad?
I feel
And
like that was their last thought. And truly, you bringing that up says to me that there is no way that this whole process was scientifically sound.
I would like to know why these assholes didn't just give her CPR. Was it because she kind of vommed a little bit on herself?
Oh, it could have been. Or maybe they were just so hyped up on adrenaline that they didn't think about it and they thought, oh, she's ODing. CPR won't do anything.
I'm thinking they didn't have CPR training, which is really sad because if you're going to be a drug
Probably
dealer, you
not.
should probably have CPR training.
Absolutely. I would want my drug dealer to know CPR and how to administer this adrenaline shot, I guess, because it's very important.
It's the first thing you fill out on the application online for being a
That
drug
is so
dealer.
good to know. That is so
Yeah.
good to know. We really need this out there. So they do save Mia, even though we think that this probably wasn't the way that she should have been saved, but whatever. And Vince drives her home and they kind of make a pact like, never happened, right? And she says, nope, never happened. And they walk away. And then we cut to a new story. And we watch Christopher Walken show up and tell a small child about how every single male relative in his family died at war and whatever. But here is this watch face that was shoved up everybody's butt. And now I'm giving it to you.
I expected his reaction in that moment to be like, "I don't wanna touch that watch.
Right.
Could you please wipe it down a little bit before you give it to me?"
Now, I know nothing about storing things anywhere but your pockets, but how does one kind of excrete an item on demand, as it were?
I'm not experienced in this area. You should have somebody
Man,
else on this podcast because I
dang.
don't know.
Listeners, please tweet at Jackie Watches with all of your information on this subject. We could really, really, really use it because truly there are some plot holes here that I'm hole that I'm trying to fill.
Alright, I'm fine.
Whew. Anyway, so after this traumatizing scene, it immediately cuts to Butch getting ready for a fight. So we learn pretty quick that Butch is the small child in the earlier scene. And he was bribed earlier in the movie by Marcellus to throw the fight. And he did not do that thing. He actually did the complete opposite of that thing. And he not only won the fight, but he killed the dude he was fighting. Which, what? What? So he bailed real hard because probably not only because he killed a guy, but he didn't even know it, but also because he didn't make good on his promise to Marcellus.
Yeah, I mean, Ving Rhames is really clear about that. He had him
Hmm.
repeat it several times. And then he jumps in gets in this cab from the 1950s. There's a theme here. They must have just bought a
Yes.
bunch of cars, like 1950s cars, said, "Let's put some in the restaurant," and then
Hmm.
this extremely beautiful, mysterious Twin Peaks type lady is gonna drive the other one.
Absolutely. And I think she actually is a character that does have a web through Tarantino's movies. I will be honest with you, Mel, and listeners, there is a lot to read about this movie because Tarantino has a wicked twisted mind, and I didn't go down all those rabbit holes, but I will tell you that this character, the taxi driver, does actually have a thread in other Tarantino movies, and the fact that she is obsessed with death is actually related to her other characters, which is very interesting.
I
And
did not
again,
know that.
Tarantino doing his thing. So yeah, go listen. I'll try to find some resources to put in the show notes, but there's just a lot and I'm like, I can't make this a 4-hour episode. So not again, at least. Not with Titanic under our belts. So
Speaking of Tarantino and Women, did I tell you that I once saw Quentin Tarantino
no, in the flesh?
in the flesh?
Tell me
It
everything.
was at night, but
Oh.
I knew it was still him because I walked right by him and I was like, "Oh, that dude looks just like Quentin Tarantino." And then I realized it was because I live in this Southern California city on the coast, sort of close to the Central Coast, really, called
Hmm.
Santa Barbara. And it's known for rich people and film festivals. And he was at the International Film Festival that year for whatever movie he made.
Wow.
So I saw him, and he had two ladies on his arms, like one lady on each arm, and they had clearly just been out for a really good time drinking. And he was like, I didn't hear what he said, but I'm pretty sure this is what happened. He told a joke that wasn't funny, and then they laughed a lot.
Uh,
So
does that surprise me?
that's the story that I'm making up that what happened because I can't imagine anything else happening. But he walked by, and I thought this is really surreal because that was just Quentin Tarantino with two ladies on his arms, and they were beautiful
Wow.
women. And yeah,
But
it-
when you're Quentin Tarantino, I guess you can get that.
I feel like that's the whole reason he even made movies in the first place was to become that guy. I'm
Yeah.
just guessing.
I secretly hope that Quentin Tarantino has been writing and directing and still filming a movie about his life that he will release after he dies and we will be able to watch it because that would be just incredible, truly.
I don't know a lot about his life, but I know about when he was writing Pulp Fiction. Did you ever read that article? I think it was in Vanity Fair, and it was this like really interesting sort of expose of what it was like being him in his early career. And apparently, there was this woman who was his typist or his assistant or whatever, and so she did most of the typing up of the script for Pulp Fiction. And so he would give her just incomprehensible, illegible notes because they came from his mind, like his brilliant madman mind. And then she would type them up and turn them into an actual script with order and periods and stuff.
Interesting.
And she doesn't really get a lot of credit. So her name was Linda Chen. I'm just going to put that out there.
Oh, let's props to Linda Chen for
Yeah.
making sense of Quentin Tarantino because that is very challenging.
The funny thing about the article was it said basically like she had no idea that she was typing up a good movie. It just seemed sort of like nonsense to her. And
I'm sure.
yeah,
I am sure. Well, let's get back to the nonsense because we need to see what happens to Butch because he is in a taxi cab going to a motel, maybe pretty seedy, kind of secretive. We find out that he actually bailed on this fight because he told his bookie friends about the bribe and therefore all of his like stats went down. This is where I very much expose that I don't gamble on sports and I don't know what proper words to use. But essentially, he gamed the system and told everybody about the bribe and then made a bunch of money. And so the plan is him and his girlfriend, maybe fiance, not quite sure their relationship, just are going to just get out of town. And then they talk about pot bellies for a while. And I didn't realize that I hated that phrase,
that
but I
whole
hate that phrase.
that whole scene was so creepy to me.
I didn't like it. I
Oh,
didn't like it at
it was
all.
uncomfortable.
It was bad.
You know what the uncomfortable part was, and I will tell you because I realized, is that she is infantilized. She acts like a
Yes.
child.
She is, and she's very young. I think that was the intention was that she would come off as very, very young compared to Butch, but it also wasn't really explained. We just kind of had to assume, okay, this is just their relationship and we're going to go forward.
I know. I think it was supposed to be kind of sweet, like a sensitive side, or that he's actually kind of a good guy, even though he
Yeah,
loses his shit later and he's totally not a nice guy. But
absolutely.
but she acts like a 9-year-old child, and it gave me the creeps,
Yeah,
the
don't love
massive
it.
creeps.
I don't love it. So we have a shower scene. We may or may not see Bruce Willis's penis. I'm not sure. Didn't want to rewind it to check, but I think it happened. And he's looking for his watch, the watch, and he cannot find it. And he freaks out. But then he has this beautiful anger management moment where he calms down and he says, "No, I'm sorry. I didn't explain to you how important this watch was to me. So I will go get it." And then he gets in the car and starts screaming. And I was like, oh my goodness. I love this. I love everything about this. This is how we should deal with our problems.
Just like scream in the car, just get in the car and just scream.
Yes.
Yeah.
Don't take it out on her. She didn't do it on purpose. Thank you for recognizing that. Go whine in your car.
That's a really good point. We should all do that.
Right? I said, let's talk about this anger management tactic. So I feel like it's important. But he decides to go back to the apartment because he cannot leave town without this watch. They have to go back to the apartment. He shows up and decides, oh, I'm in a huge hurry. I know, I'll have this Pop-Tart in my cupboard still. But then decides to actually toast it, which, what?
Right.
What?
That was hilarious.
Like, I thought we were in a rush, bud. Thought we had to get out of here.
He genuinely thought he was cool at the moment. He was like, oh, you know what? Nobody is really here. And then he notices the enormous gun. I mean, after that,
Yes. And so
it's about a foot away.
he kind of stops and thinks about it. And I need to know, Mel, what would you do in this situation if you were Butch?
If I saw a semi-automatic with a silencer next to my
Yes.
sink, I would literally be gone a second later. You wouldn't know that I was there. I would literally just not exist anymore. Like, I would apparate out of the apartment. I would be gone so
Wow.
fast. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I absolutely agree. But that is not what he does. He decides just to stand there because he hears the toilet flush and the door opens and it's Vince. And I was really sad and surprised.
Yeah.
And this is kind of where all the timelines start to knot themselves up because it's just Vince. So we're not quite sure where Jules is, but we learn later that Jules has decided that he's never going to kill people ever again because of divine intervention. And he immediately kills Vince coming out of the bathroom and then immediately says, oh, I just killed someone, and kind of gently places the gun on the side table and takes a Kleenex and wipes it down a little bit.
He did a really terrible job of that. I was
miserable.
so worried because I thought, okay, he's not wiping his prints off of that with a little like with the Kleenex. This is the kind of thing where you watch sort of crime shows or whatever, or you listen to true crime. Oh, I listen to true crime. I don't know about you.
Mm-hmm.
And you think you really don't want the criminals to get away with things, but at the same time, you're thinking to yourself, why did you do that? Why did you leave so much evidence behind? Why did you leave your prints? I feel like if you're going to be a criminal, you should just give a little bit more strategic thought to your actions.
Just a couple more minutes of planning really could go far for these criminals.
Right.
Goodness. We should make a podcast, Mel. I read a cool little factoid as I was doing my research on this, and it's about the bathroom. Are you interested to hear it?
I'm super interested.
So I'm just going to read this verbatim, and I apologize that I cannot cite the source, but I'm pretty sure this is also on many, many different articles if you truly just search Pulp Fiction facts. But it says, bathroom breaks are bad news in this film. Whenever Vincent Vega goes to the bathroom, tragedy occurs. During his 3 bathroom breaks in the movie, Mia Wallace overdoses, the restaurant where he and Jules are dining is held up in a robbery, and Bruce Willis's Butch Coolidge gets the drop on him.
I'm not going to lie to you, Jackie. That seems like the most relatable thing in this whole movie. I mean,
what terrible things have happened while you're in the bathroom?
I mean, apart from just the thing itself, I don't know. It's so relatable. Like, you go to the bathroom and you're so vulnerable because you're not in the room where the stuff is happening anymore. I don't know. You take off your pants for a minute, which is kind of vulnerable.
You're very vulnerable, yeah.
Yeah. You need to wash your hands, so you have to run water, which is kind of loud. So you're not really. You can't covertly go to the bathroom.
Absolutely.
And so I just really feel John Travolta on this one. I'm feeling him.
Wow. Well, I'm glad I could speak to you with this fact. I didn't realize it was going to have such a really big, impactful moment right there with it all involving the bathroom. I had no idea.
there weren't very many relatable moments in the movie for me, but this, John Travolta using the bathroom is up there.
That's a great summary for this movie. So after he kills Vince in the bathroom, he leaves and sees Marcellus crossing the street, and then there's a big. It moves very fast, but amongst all of this crazy, we see Kathy Griffin do a small cameo.
What? Wait, I
Did you
missed
see
it.
her?
No. Was she one of the ladies who was
Mm-hmm.
hanging over him when he was like gaining consciousness?
Yes, she
Okay,
was.
okay, okay.
She honestly does not, in my opinion, look like herself, but I was not sitting very close to the TV, but I had to remember that this came out in 94.
Right.
So, yes, she does have a small cameo and she's in the credits. So
Nice.
you do see her for a minute, and then they have a crazy scuffle in an electronics shop, and then the calm and cool store clerk says, "All right, just chill, everybody chill." And I wrote in my notes, calm and cool store clerk is the MVP. And then I said, "Oh wait, never mind,"
The
because
the
he
biggest never mind you've ever never
he
minded.
he completely does a 180 and has them tied up wearing gags in their basement. And this is where I almost wanted to shut it off, Mel. This was the point where I said, I don't know if I can do this movie anymore.
I mean, that was literally my thought as well. I have to tell you, I thought, oh yeah, that's right. That's what happens now. And this is why I haven't rewatched the movie in 20 years. So
Yep.
it was a big no thanks moment. It was the guy who, I forget his name, Zed, the guy
Zed,
who has like
yes.
eyeliner on and some earrings, and he's like
Yep.
clearly off duty security guard. I
Mm-hmm.
was like, I'm gonna get hit right in the face with a wave of homophobia right now.
Uh-huh.
It was like
It was a lot. It was
weirdly
a lot.
mixed in with white supremacy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It was
Yep.
super, super uncomfy,
This all feels
problematic.
bad,
Yeah,
and
that's
I
what
don't
feels
want
bad.
to I don't want to skim over it and imply that discussions of white supremacy and homophobia are not important, but for the sake of discussing this movie and keeping it in a reasonable amount of time, we will just say that this feels very, very bad in 2020.
Wow, I just wondered where they were going with the moral lesson, you know. Just
Yeah.
Jackie, can we talk just a minute about the craziness happening in the secret torture basement of that pawn shop?
Yeah, there is a lot happening here, especially if, I mean, on the surface, there's a lot happening here because we have pivoted to a whole different kind of movie. But also, if we look at it through kind of the 2020 lens back into the 90s, we've got a lot of
Yeah.
homophobia. We've
Oh,
got some white supremacy going on. We're just not loving that. And I know we could have a whole episode on strictly this scene, but I mean, the thing that jumped out to me first was just this idea that basically Zed was going to rape Marcellus, but also we can't tell people about it, and super homophobic. It was not great. Didn't love.
oh, it was really awkwardly executed, and I think that the thing was that he thought he was being super edgy.
Hmm.
It seems so edgy for a mid-90s movie, but I really feel like once you just get past that just a little bit, you realize just how awkward it was and extremely problematic. And,
Hmm.
it's not the only point in the movie where there's just, like, this really obvious racism. And I wanna say it's racism because I'm seeing the whole movie through the lens of being Quentin Tarantino writing this
Hmm.
and thinking, "You know what would be fine is if I had a white guy say the N word a lot." And,
Yeah.
and then there are some scenes where Samuel L. Jackson is interacting with the white people and he's just really, like, calm and meek around them, and I don't know, it's just super weird, and I don't know, there are a lot of, derogatory words for different races used in this movie, which I'm not gonna name what they are, but you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, I even had to Google a couple phrases because I had not even heard them and figure out, oh, that's not a great one either. Add that to the list.
Right. It's kind of old-timey racism, but, those words sort of stuck around for a while and they got replaced by other words, but it was racist across the board. There was some racism against, Latino people,
Mm.
generalized Asian population,
Yes.
Black people, and it's just a bit of a free for all. But I really think that seeing it through the lens of the actual creator, he was kind of glamorizing the people who were racist and when they were being racist,
Right.
and
And yeah,
that's what I didn't love.
I was gonna say the same thing. Earlier, right in the beginning of the episode, you said this is Quentin Tarantino trying to be the cool guy and just insert him in the cool guy things. And I mean, in 1994, I was in a different place in my life and didn't see the world the way I see the world now. But, Quentin, was this the way that you saw the world that you thought was cool? Was this the cool thing to do? And I mean, calling everyone the N-word, whether you're black or white, I know that was on trend for the time, and that does not make it okay.
It so doesn't make it okay. It was just the opposite. It was like if okay is over here, it was way over
All the
there.
way.
It's
All
all
the
the way.
way.
Just
All the way.
yeah, it's on the other side of the country.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was super not okay, and
Yeah.
it's just so interesting how the times have changed since '94. I mean, that's been 26 years. We're just going to round it down to
Mhm.
25 so that I don't feel super duper old. Um, because I don't feel like 25 years have passed since then, but they clearly have.
Mm.
And what I think is super interesting is that I didn't think about it at all, and I had almost no awareness of my whiteness and my white privilege when I
Mhm.
watched that movie, just being like a young person surrounded by her white family. Um, and my friends, strangely enough, just didn't have those eyes open. And then as the years went by, it's just you look back on how much things have changed in 25 years, and it's fascinating. And it's
Absolutely.
not that I'm like saying he should have censored himself. It's just why did he think it was so funny and interesting?
Right.
You
That
know?
the fact that it was plot points, but even that it wasn't plot points, it was almost sprinkled in just because he could. That's always when it
Yeah.
feels bad. It's when it feels bad. And that's why a lot of things feel bad when we rewatch it in 2020. It was hard. This whole scene was hard to watch, not only just because it was odd and really kind of diverted from the tone of the whole movie. I know we were seeing drugs and violence, but this took it to a whole level that I don't think it needed to go to for the sake of the plot, but here we are.
It was like he was uniting these two enemies with a common enemy, which is
Right.
getting getting sodomized by a man. And I know that it was meant to be non-consensual, which is always not good in any situation. Obviously, not non-consensual sex. The rape part is terrible. It's just that any mention of like men being intimate with men in the movie was a joke or was like the worst possible thing that could happen
Mhm.
to you.
Yeah, this reminds me of when everyone said no homo for a really long
Oh
time.
yeah, oh my god.
It was really painful.
Yeah, it was really
No homo.
weird.
Foot massage, no homo. It was painful. But we get through the scene, thankfully, and Butch actually has a moment where he's going to bounce and leave Marcellus to whatever was happening to him. But he has a moment of clarity and decides to go back, finds a samurai sword. There's a fight. Marcellus gets free. Someone gets shot in the dick. It's a whole thing. You just got to watch it, I guess. It was a lot.
I will be honest and say that I fast forwarded because I remember what happened.
You're like, I got it.
I
I
got
noted.
it.
I know what the scene looks like. And yeah, I mean, we can just leave it at that. It was pretty far out there, even for a Quentin Tarantino movie. Like I said, it kind of it derailed even from the craziness of this plot. It derailed a little bit too far. So, in any case, after this bonkers scene, we cut back, and this is again where the timelines start to tighten the knots between each other because we're starting to see more pieces of the story tie themselves together, and we end up back in the apartment that we saw in the beginning of the movie with Vince and Jules. And there is someone trembling in the bathroom with a gun, seemingly getting ready to kill Vince and Jules. And I wanted to mention this only because I found out that this actor who plays this very, very shaky boy in the bathroom is actually the same actor that played George in The Wedding Singer, which is another movie I just watched. So if you
Wait,
have
I did
not watched that
not.
episode, yeah.
I have seen The Wedding Singer, but I did not connect it.
Yeah, so the actor is Alexis Arquette, and she actually underwent gender reassignment surgery in 2006. So after Pulp Fiction came out, and she has a whole documentary about her experience called Alexis Arquette, She's My Brother. But she did pass away in 2016 due to HIV, which is unfortunate because I absolutely loved her in The Wedding Singer, and listening to her sing Do You Really Want to Hurt Me a million times over.
Gosh, that was the best part of the movie. Okay, R.I.P.
Yeah.
Alexis.
Yeah, so just a little note there, little plug for the other episode of Jackie Watches stuff, but just an interesting little fact. So anyway, I don't even know this boy's name in the movie. He's like Bill or something. Tries to shoot Jules and misses completely, and Jules decides this is divine intervention and just says, I'm not doing this anymore.
That
I
was
can't.
that was the other most relatable moment in the movie was shooting and then missing.
Oh, I was going to say when you got shot at and then it missed you. I was confused what you were relating to in this scene. Do you mean you literally have shot something and missed, or like a
No,
metaphorical
I just feel
shot
pretty confident that if I tried to shoot somebody in the heat of the moment, I would miss.
at like super close range?
Exactly.
So either it was divine intervention or it was just bad luck. We're not quite sure, but Jules says, I'm out. I can't do this. So they take Marvin, this poor little boy who was trembling by the front door that we even see in the beginning of the movie, and they take him in the car with him. And I will say, I think I saw this coming because John Travolta is in the front seat and he whips around to talk to Marvin, and he's holding his gun and kind of lackadaisically flopping it around. It's kind of like when you're eating and you talk with your hands and you're holding the knife in your hand to talk to somebody. It's that level of threat, but times a million because this is a gun. And he shoots Marvin in the head. Oh
Or
no.
Marvin. Oh, that moment was just so sad because I
And
thought
it was 8 a.m. It's too early for
it's
this.
much too early. Oh,
I don't love it. So Jules, with pieces of fake brain and blood on his body and his hair, calls his buddy Jimmy, who we know is Quentin Tarantino, and says, Yo, I'm coming over. I got a problem. And Jimmy shows up in his like very suburban, very cutesy house that clearly him and his wife have made a nice little life in, and says, Hey, I need your help. I need to get rid of this body. And Jimmy says, Absolutely not, in much more colorful language that I won't repeat.
he drops the N-word repeatedly, which I know that
Yes.
he felt really good about doing, and it was just not okay.
Yeah, not okay. Yeah,
I also
another
wanna
feels
point out
doesn't
that
feel good moment.
Toluca Lake is in, like, the valley, so it feels really suburban because if you're in LA, you think anything sort of in the valley is not in the city, but for me, somebody who lives way up in Santa Barbara, if you're living in Toluca Lake, you're basically living in Burbank, which is basically LA anyway, so, I mean, LA people, do not at me, I'm sorry, it's just it is not the suburbs, it's, like, really close to Griffith Park, it's yeah. Anyway.
I am loving this hot take. I have no knowledge of California geography, so I'm so glad. I didn't even like plan this to have you on for this moment to talk about California geography, but I'm very excited that you could drop that hot take.
Thank you. I was born in the Valley and spent a lot of time there as a kid. This is pre-Seattle. So yeah.
You heard it here first.
Mhm.
It's not the city. It's basically LA.
This has been the Valley Girl Hot Take Corner.
We have a jingle and everything. I love it. Perfect. So Jimmy is very upset. Like you said, he drops the N word many times. He's also much more concerned about getting divorced than the fact that there is a dead body in his garage. But, priorities. It's fine.
Yeah.
So Jules calls Marcellus, who calls in the wolf. And these two boys, Vince and Jules, fangirl over this guy. They love him. They're his biggest fan. And he's going to solve everything about the whole headless corpse in the car that is now covered in blood because the face was shot off. If you don't remember that happening. Thanks a lot, Vince. Well done.
I do remember seeing part of his face in the trunk and thinking that was bad continuity.
It was awful. I said the exact same thing. Thank you so
Exactly.
much.
Yeah.
I said he was shot directly in the face.
So
We
why
should
was
not
his face
see
there?
any of his face.
Exactly.
Any of it. So maybe this dude got off lucky and he didn't get blowed up in the face. Maybe like it was a quick and dirty in the heart thing or something.
I'm not going to describe what I think it was. Let's just move on.
Yep, moving forward. Absolutely. So basically, the wolf shows up and says, "Great, you're going to clean the car. You're going to take the body and put it in the trunk. You're going to go get me some quilts. It's going to be great." And go. And so I Googled how to clean bloodstains from a car, and I have not been
Oh,
like arrested or anything yet. And there's a lot of different options. You can use baking soda, meat tenderizing paste,
mm,
lemon water,
oh,
salt water, or hydrogen peroxide, and it should do the trick.
oh my gosh, they
So
really recommend a lot of those for when you have acid reflux too.
interesting. I'm not quite sure why those things would be the same.
I don't know. You know
Interesting.
what?
I think we need a science podcast.
Did you tell that the FBI agent who's secretly monitoring you that this was just for your podcast?
Yeah, I feel like I should have probably done a subsequent search that was like how to clear your search history when you're researching for a podcast, but it looks incriminating.
Exactly.
And that would have really done it. That would have really, really done it.
I would have gone incognito, but that would have been more suspicious.
Right. That's weird. You don't do that. I just own it. My search history is all over the place. But I do now know there is a wiki how about how to clean bloodstains from a car. So clearly other people have done this for whatever reason.
Their
It's
reasons are
fun.
their own.
Right. No judgment here. So it works, I guess. Jules and Vince have their little scuffle in the car, whatever, wah wah, and they clean the whole thing. It looks great. And now we get to go to the diner for breakfast, but not before changing all of our clothes. And then all of the timelines kind of lock together because they're in these dorky outfits, which we've seen when Vince and Jules went to the bar to go get stuff with Marcellus and talk to him. And so we see all the timelines coming together. But they show up at the diner, and it's the same diner, we find out, that we saw all the way in the beginning of the movie.
You know, I found out about that diner. It was bulldozed,
Ooh.
and now it's an AutoZone.
Oh,
I know, sad, right? Because I would have
that's
really
such a
liked to go
bummer.
there. I actually
Yeah.
went to the diner where the diner in Parks and Rec that they go to is actually a real diner in Van Nuys, and I went there on purpose because I wanted to feel like I was in Parks and Rec.
There
Uh,
we go.
I know, right? And I would have gone to the Pulp Fiction diner just because I kind of like diners. It just doesn't exist anymore.
Wow, what a bummer.
No.
I wish they would have kept that around. Bummer. Maybe because it actually, even though we did see the robbery, maybe they actually did get away with it. And that's why they had to bulldoze it down. They went into bankruptcy.
It's sad.
Dun, dun, dun. So Jules gives Vince this whole speech about how it was divine intervention with those bullets earlier. I'm not doing this anymore. And then we kind of see the robbery go down because we hear the line where he says coffee very loud in the beginning of the movie. So you put all the pieces together. And of course, we know that Vince goes to the bathroom and therefore something bad is about to happen. And the robbers, Honey Bunny, and why am I blanking on his name?
Pumpkin.
Pumpkin, thank you.
Tim Roth.
They, yes, more more commonly known. They start the robbery and they start to hold everybody up. Cut to John Travolta sitting on the toilet reading an actual Pulp Fiction magazine, which is very funny and
Whoa,
meta.
you're right.
Very, very meta. So, I mean, I'm not going to go through every detail of the scene because it's a lot of back and forth where Pumpkin and Honey Bunny are, sticking people up and telling people to give us your wallets. And the manager comes out and he says that, I'm just a coffee shop manager, which I did read. The coffee shop manager says, I'm just a coffee shop. And then Pumpkin kind of holds him down to the table. And because he never said coffee shop manager, they edited his credit. So instead of coffee shop manager, played by Joe Smith or whoever, it just says coffee shop Joe Smith, which is very funny.
Wow.
So he's the whole coffee shop. Jules decides, okay, that whole divine intervention thing. Like, I guess that's not happening right now because people's lives are in danger. So you see him slowly cocking his gun under the table, and he lures Pumpkin over to the table with this suitcase. And I have to ask you, Mel, what do you think is in the suitcase?
Oh, the suitcase. Well,
I have no idea, I'll be
I
honest.
know literally what was in the suitcase. They put an orange like light bulb.
Oh.
So it was electrically rigged it was an orange light bulb, and that's why it looked really golden when everybody would open it. But the thing that was supposed to be in it, sort of story wise, is was never revealed. There's just all these theories out there,
Mhm.
and some people say that it was like Marcellus Wallace's soul that he had traded to
Ooh.
the devil or whatever, and or sold to the devil. And uh, I honestly thought that it was just a bunch of gold.
Yeah.
And that's the most mundane answer anybody could ever think of. Like,
I, like, truly thought we were going to see it, which I guess it's funny, and I don't know about you, but I was never intrigued by what was in this suitcase at all until this scene, where I was like, "Oh,
exactly.
yeah, we
No,
don't know
yeah.
what's in there, huh?" We have no idea. So, I couldn't tell you. I'm wondering if it's just something super bizarre, like the head of the silver monkey from Guts or whatever that game show was that I can't think of now from the 90s. But I truly don't know what it is. Clearly nobody knows what it is. So Pumpkin is infatuated. He is just enamored with this thing and says, "Oh, is that?" And he said, "Yeah." And then Jules pulls him down and is going to shoot him and makes him sit down. And then we see kind of the conclusion of this movie. Vincent shows up in the middle of all of this and just kind of immediately cocks his gun because that's what Vincent does. And he's ready. He doesn't know what's going on, but he just knows that he's ready to shoot whoever.
And Amanda Plummer is freaking out because she does a really good freak out lady. She's just
Yes.
like unhinged, and I love her a lot. And also, I want to point out that Vince is wearing a UC Santa Cruz Banana Slugs shirt. It's the exact same shirt that my wife had
Oh my God.
because she went to UC Santa Cruz. And
I love
up
that.
until about like 5 or so years ago when it was so holy that we had to throw it away, but, it was just funny to see him wearing the shirt that she had and, like, completely forget that that was the case.
Yeah, that's amazing that it's an accurate shirt and it's
It
not
is. It
made. That's an amazing fact that you're not gonna find on the internet, that that's a real shirt. I love it. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. So, I have to quote one of, I think, the quotes that made me laugh the hardest in this movie, and truly it probably wasn't even written to be that funny, but Jules pulls Pumpkin down and makes him sit down and points the gun at him, and he looks at him deadpan and he says, "You happen to pull this shit while I'm in a transitional period." And I could not stop laughing. I thought it was the funniest thing. Like,
that's because Samuel L.
I'm in this
Jackson is an amazing person on
he's
screen. I
wonderful.
feel like
Like,
he's
he's
way too good for this movie even.
he is. He
Ugh.
is. He did a great job all the way through, but this was the cherry on top for me where he basically said, "I'm done with this. I could just shoot you right now, but I'm trying to be a better person, so instead I'm just going to hold you at gunpoint and threaten you with your life." Like, it's amazing.
I think that my favorite thing to think about Samuel L. Jackson is that so this came out in '94, right?
Mhm.
Didn't Jurassic Park come out the year before?
Ooh,
It's
great
like
question.
two really good Samuel L. Jackson movies. And I honestly think that his better role was in Jurassic Park.
Ooh, another hot take.
I know.
Interesting.
It
I guess, I mean, I'll have to think about that and get back to you.
'Kay.
I have not seen Jurassic Park in a very long time, so I need to get back to you on that. But I mean, anything he does is very, very good and funny, and I appreciate all of his very deadpan moments, which are just perfection. And this was the most perfect of all of them, in my opinion. But this is basically the end of the movie. Jules kind of says, "Listen, take the $1,500 in my wallet, get out of here, don't come back." And he gives his Bible quote shepherd thing again. And that's kind of the end of the movie, which is an odd ending because we you kind of right at the end of that movie figure out oh, all the timelines and wait, we watched them in completely out of order, and then you have to reassemble them in your brain, which admittedly I don't think I've yet done, but we basically watch all these people fumble through life in a world of drugs and violence.
That's so true. It's true. It's a really weird ending. I was trying to think why they ended it that way, and I think it's because of Jules' character arc. And I'm giving Quentin Tarantino more credit than I want to give him, but it's going against my DNA at this point. But he starts out doing this Bible quote. Well, he does it what, 3 times? Does he do the Bible
Yeah.
quote 3 times?
Mhm.
And he kind of says that he's a different person in the quote each time, and then at the very end, in his moment of clarity, he says that he thinks he's actually just like the evil man or I don't know. I forget what the quote is.
Yeah.
So it was like he was realizing some heavy truths about himself and decided to go on his walkabout. And then we never see him again. I at least appreciate that he lives in this movie.
Absolutely. And so maybe to your earlier point, maybe this is a movie about Jules.
Maybe.
I mean, it's buried under like Uma Thurman and John Travolta going dancing, but it is an interesting character arc to watch.
It is.
He definitely has the most transformative story.
I feel like we didn't talk about the wolf as much as I thought we were going to when I was watching the movie.
Oh, well,
The
tell me
wolf.
all your theories.
So I don't have any theories, maybe some hot takes. So my thought about the wolf is, first of all, he got to that guy's house in 9 minutes or whatever,
Yup.
and that's physically impossible. I don't care where he was in the valley, he did not get to Luke Lake in 9 minutes. That's
He
impossible.
drives really fast.
No, that's not. It doesn't matter. If you're in a helicopter, maybe. Yeah.
Who knows?
So that's my hot take. I think LA people will back me up on this. And I love Harvey Keitel just because he's always that same guy in like every
Yes.
movie.
And
Uh,
I'm fine with him being typecasted into this role of like the mobster gangster. I'm going to solve all your problems. Don't worry about it kind of vibe. Yeah, I'm down.
so quick sidebar: did you watch that show Shrill?
No.
Oh, it's on Hulu. It's so good. It's really, really good. At least I liked it, and I highly recommend it. But the gal who is working at the junkyard is actually the mom of the main character on Shrill, and I love that. There's some I don't know, but I recognized her in that because it was kind of amazing.
Oh,
I know
that's fun.
she's much older, but like I love her.
Goodness. They're all over the place. Well, we got a lot of hot takes about California geography, and I love that. Thank you so, so much for bringing that to this show.
No problem. For somebody who
We
hasn't left their house in about 4 months, I could tell you all about driving around places.
It's just something you dream about now because of COVID.
Yeah, it's a distant memory.
Goodness. Well, Mel, we went through this Quentin Tarantino journey together. Thank you for holding my hand and getting me to the other side. I normally try to summarize for folks that have not yet seen these movies, like the talking points that will allow them to sound like they've seen this movie, but that's really hard to do.
There, there are so many parts of this movie that you could just drop, and somebody would be like, "Oh yeah, you saw Pulp Fiction, right?"
You absolutely saw it. I mean, the F word, the N word, those are two very commonly used words in this movie. You could talk about the dance competition with John Travolta and Uma Thurman and how weird that was. You can talk about the drug overdose scene where John Travolta had to pretend to stab Uma Thurman, but instead it was movie magic. You can talk about Bruce Willis being in this film. You can talk about The Watch. There's so many things you can talk about.
You could talk about Bruce Willis's '90s like guy jeans,
Absolutely, you
and
can.
then you would sound really knowledgeable.
That is very true. I think we've prepped our listeners for this movie.
I have no doubt anybody listening to this is just ready to talk about Pulp Fiction like they've seen it. And I'm really glad that you brought me on this journey. Thanks for letting me go with you, Jackie.
I loved every minute of it, Mel. Hopefully, we'll be able to drive through California together at lightning speed someday.
It's doubtful.
Jackie Watches Stuff is supported by our listeners. I'd like to thank our supporters in the Academy on Patreon for their generous ongoing support of the show. Paul H., Brianna S., Jarrett S., Thomas S., Linda V., Missy V. If you'd like to join the esteemed ranks of the Academy and get a shout out for supporting us, among other cool benefits, visit patreon.com/JackieWatchesStuff. You can also support the show by submitting a review on your favorite podcast player, or by sharing us with your family and friends. Jackie Watches Stuff is hosted by Jackie Vitrano, and produced by me, Sean Flynn. Find me on Twitter at WXGeek or on Instagram at Arcade Fun Complex. Jackie Watches Stuff is available wherever fine podcasts are sold, or listen online at JackieWatchesStuff.com. You can also send us your thoughts on Pulp Fiction on Twitter. We're at Jackie Watches. Thanks for listening. Join us next time when we watch all 3 original Star Wars movies. Yep, all 3. May the Force be with us.